What's up, One Church? How we feeling here in Gehenna? Make some noise if you're excited to be in church this morning. Got to say and give some love to Northwest, the Northwest campus. Let them hear you guys. Let them hear you. And then also got to say hello to the lovely people online. I am obviously not Greg Ford, if you guys haven't put two and two together. Greg is out this weekend. He's spending some time with his family, resting. That's what he told me. I'm not sure if I believe him, honestly, because the Browns just made the playoffs for the first time in what seems like forever, and they play in a playoff game this weekend, and I don't know if you guys know this either, but the Buckeyes are getting geared up to play in the national championship game. Any Buckeye fans in the house? Online? There we go. And if you know anything about Pastor Greg, you know he's a huge Browns and Buckeyes fan. So he might be saying he's spending some time with some family, getting rest in. He's working harder than he does on the weekends. He's in the kitchen getting the little smokies ready. He's getting the appetizers ready. He's putting on face paint and everything. He's ready for a weekend full of football. My name is THOMPSON. I'm the Next Generation Director here at One Church, youth pastor, and I'm really excited to be here, standing on the stage, sharing a message and a word that God has really been doing in my life. Last time Greg asked me to speak, my wife Molly was pregnant with our first daughter, Cooper Joe. She's not pregnant anymore. We had Cooper last November, and so this Christmas was like her first Christmas. Yes, she got to spend last Christmas with us, but it didn't really count. She was like a blob. We didn't get her any gifts from us. Like, we got ourselves gifts from her just to have fun with it, right, to enter her into the family. But this Christmas was like the first Christmas, right? Her first Christmas. She got gifts, she got presents. She finally kind of understood it. She was unwrapping them, even tediously and slowly. And she's got some funny quirks to her personality. She loves music. And so we got her the gifts that like take the batteries and they get annoying after a while. And then the parents, you take the batteries out after like a week or two so you can have some peace and quiet again. We got her some of those gifts, like a piano. She's got some dance moves. She loves music. This is her favorite dance move right here, the fist pump. And but she loves books too. She loves books. She loves music and reading and being read to, storytelling. And we got her more books than probably anything else, like 8 or 9 books. And she would unwrap a book. She would get excited about the book. She would crawl over to me and Molly. She would sit in our lap. We would read the book together. And then she would crawl back under the tree, grab the next present, open that book, crawl back to us. It was amazing. It was really cool. She loves reading, loves storytelling. And actually, I brought some of her favorite books, hopefully to bring me some good luck today. Panda Bear, What Do You See? We have a classic here, Where the Wild Things Are. And then honestly, right on top here is one of her favorites, one of my favorites. It's Pig the Pug. Pig the Pug. You don't have to know the content. I'm not expecting you to know this classic right here, Pig the Pug. All you need to know is that Pig the Pug is one book in a series of books. It's a collection of stories. And I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but it's a pug named Pig. It's a pug named Pig. That's important too. But it's a collection of stories. And I think it's an important reminder for us today, because we think that our life is just one story. We think that God is only writing one story in our life. It's actually a lot like Pig the Pug. Pig the Pug has Pig the Pug Halloween and Pig the Pug Thanksgiving, Pig the Pug Christmas. I got the Christmas one here. They got creative with the title. They said Pig the Elf. Pig the Elf. They got creative. But we are one character in a lot of different stories that God is writing in our life. It's not just one story. If you're anything like me, sometimes in my past, I would think, man, I messed up so much. I said something I didn't mean to. I made a mistake so big that I thought I messed up my story. I thought I messed up what God was trying to do in my life, and that's not true. What is true is He has the power to write a new story, and we need to believe that. It led me to a question like, what makes a great story? What makes a great story? I have a couple books here along with Cooper's favorites. I have some of my favorites. And in a great story, there's a character that's introduced. That character is invited into adventure, accepts an invitation into adventure. That character, when they accept the adventure, they face some trial, they face some drama, they face some adversity, they face some challenge, they face some tests along the way. That character has enemies. That character has helpers, Any Harry Potter fans? You know Hermione Granger is a mentor and a helper to Harry Potter. And that character has a little bit of romance too, if you're into those stories, okay? That character has achievement, success, triumph, a celebration. And then it's the end of the book. It's the end of the story. It's a culmination of all those things that make a great story. It's a culmination. You might be in a story right now that represents a little more struggle than success. The way you woke up today, the way you walked in the room today, wherever you're at, you can probably pinpoint where you're at in your story, in whatever story you're in. You might be in a story that represents the end of your first marriage. You might be in a story that represents like the loss of a loved one. You might be in a story that represents a little bit more of a mystery, a little bit more of an adventure. Maybe you're in a story that's like a romantic comedy. Congratulations, that's a fun one. That's a fun one. But there's a lot of different stories in our lives. And I think it's really important for us to kick off this entire message with a reminder that we can never underestimate God's power to write a new story. That the past story, it's not big enough for God, that he can write a new story. Actually, in Hebrews 12:2, it says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. I love that. The author and finisher of our faith. It's a great reminder. I want to jump into a book in the Bible, a little bit of God's word today. We're gonna reference Philippians. Philippians is written by Paul. It's a letter written by Paul. And if you know anything about Paul, he's kind of an entrepreneur of the gospel. He kind of, back in the day, he went around and planted churches in cities and towns and everything. And he's writing this letter, Philippians, to the church of Philippi. And that's a place that he visited, planted a church and everything. And the church there, people of Christ, the body of Christ, is going through a little bit more of a story that has struggle than success. And Paul is actually writing this letter from prison. Talk about struggle. That's a story right there. Paul's writing from prison. And I pick up Philippians 3:12-14, and it says, I don't mean to say that I have already achieved these things or that I have already reached perfection, but I press on to possess that perfection which Christ Jesus first possessed me. No, dear brothers and sisters, I have not achieved it, but I focus on one thing, forgetting the past and looking forward to what lies ahead. I press on to reach the end of the race and receive the heavenly prize for which God, through Christ Jesus, is calling us. And again, I say, forgetting the past and looking forward to what lies ahead. I want to frame the rest of the conversation that we're having today off of this one thought, this one sentence. It's this thought that every decision creates a new version of us. Every decision that we make creates a new version of us. It shifts our resume a little bit. It shifts the story. It molds the story. It changes the story. Each and every decision that we make, small, big, it doesn't matter, creates a new version of us. And if you're anything like me, I always make decisions based on moving forward. I'm always thinking, man, how do I level up? How do I get a little better? How do I achieve a little more? How do I have more success? How do I have more success so I can set other people up for success around me? It's all about hitting mile markers for me. And if I know about if I'm achieving, if I'm making progress, then I'm moving forward, right? And here's a little bit about my story. Here's kind of the story of Zach. I grew up in Iowa. I was an athlete. I played some sports in high school. Played baseball, football. Those were my kind of two biggest. I don't know what motivated me. I wanted to get into a little bit of high school politics, so I joined Student Senate, and then I joined National Honor Society. I thought that was going to look good on the resume, right? Made those decisions moving forward. After high school, I played junior college baseball. I was recruited more for football, but I decided to play baseball. I don't know, I just thought that was the path that God had for me, so I made that decision. I played 2 years there. When I got to college, I made a decision that I was going to major in early childhood education. I wanted to teach the youngins. My mom is a special education teacher. I wanted to follow in her footsteps, and I chose it, but when you get to college, they kind of like force you to choose a major. Like you don't really have, you have to choose one. And then I played 2 years there, went to college 2 years there. Then I transferred to Cleveland State. So I moved 12 hours to Ohio here, played at Cleveland State. When I got there, if anyone's transferred colleges, credits don't always line up. So I had to switch my major a little bit. I went from early childhood education to I was going to be a high school math teacher. So I made that decision, and then I transferred again after my junior year. I transferred to Ashland University, go Eagles, and played my senior year there. When I got there too, I transferred again, and if you know anything about credits, they don't really transfer that well. So I had to change my major again, kinesiology, exercise science, and then after that, I went to grad school. Went to grad school for 2 years. After grad school, I moved to Columbus, Ohio, got a job at the Wellington School, shout out Jaguars, worked there for 4 years, left that job, started to become a life and leadership coach. I traveled and I was speaking at schools and different organizations, walking with people, and it was really fun. And then 2 years after doing that, I accepted the job at One Church. I'm here now. Those were all decisions that changed my resume a little bit. They moved me forward. They changed my story. They changed future stories for me too. And every decision again was based on how do I level up? How do I move the needle? How do I discover more? We're in this Discover series. How do I discover more about myself? How do I become better? And how do I become more? How do I become more? If you've been tracking with One Church for a while, maybe not, maybe you're brand new to One Church, one of Pastor Greg's best collection of messages, stories, I think, is the Become series. Become series. It changed my life, I'm telling you. And in the Become series, Greg talks about how God cares more about who you're becoming than what you're doing. And then he talks about how like you're loved, like you were created and you were loved. You didn't even have to do anything to win the approval of God. You're created and you're loved. You're gifted. You're anointed. You have strengths. You have all these different things, and it changed my life. And I heard all those messages, and I walked out of the auditorium, or I turned the podcast off, and I left feeling motivated and inspired. And now Pastor Greg's writing a book now, and that's going to come out, and it's going to reach the masses, and it's going to do all these amazing things. But whenever I hear the word become, I get excited and motivated, but then I also feel anxious and overwhelmed. I do. It's just like this combination of all these weird emotions wrapped together, and I have no choice but to be honest with you guys. I feel anxious and overwhelmed when I think about becoming more, because I always question, like, what if I don't get my story right? Like, what if I don't become the person God created me to become? It's kind of like this esoteric thing, right? And when I think about the word become, I think about a path. I think about a road that God has planned for me. And I referenced the mile markers before. The mile markers are on the side of the path, and I'm so focused on moving forward on that path. The Bible actually references paths a lot. In Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take." Psalms 119, 105, it says, "Your word is a lamp to guide my feet and a light for my path." Psalms 23, 3, it says, "He renews my strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name." And Psalms 25, 4, it says, "Show me the right path, O Lord. Point out the road for me to follow." Love those verses. We should be done after those verses. I just love those verses. They inspire me. I've seen the Instagram like motivational graphics where they get posted and then they get liked and commented on and shared, and then other people like, comment, and share them. I've seen the Pinterest graphics. I've seen all those things. I've seen the bumper stickers of these verses. I even have some of these verses written on Post-it notes sticking on my desk at home. I know these verses. I love them. They instill a little bit more trust that I have with God, but I still question them. I do. Just because I know him, just because I love him, doesn't mean that I don't have doubt. Doesn't mean that I don't have questions. And here's some things that I question with God, with my path. I question my path. I question if I'm on the right path. I question my pace, and I question my potential. My path, pace, and potential. I don't know if you guys are like me or this kind of seems like your conversation with God, but I ask these questions to him a lot. God, am I on the right path? Am I going at the rate you want me to? Am I hitting the mile markers at the right time? Am I doing enough? Am I achieving enough? What if I don't become the person that you created me to be, God? What if I don't live up to a certain standard that others put on me? What if I don't live up to the standard that I put on myself? What if I don't get my story right? What if my past is too heavy? What if the burdens that I carry weigh me down too much? What if the mistakes that I've made are too big? What if my biggest fear, what if I don't live up to my potential? What if I don't live up to my potential? I question my path, pace, and potential. But here's the thing that's interesting right now that God's really wrestling with me on. I've questioned those three things, but I've never questioned my direction on the path. Like I said, I've always wanted to move forward. I've always wanted to achieve more. I've always wanted to level up. I've always wanted to move on and get to the next thing in life. And I've never questioned my direction. I've never intentionally turned around and faced backward. And maybe even taken a couple steps. Maybe even taken a couple steps there. I've never done that. And again, it's this anxious feeling because I've never wanted to do that. I've always wanted to move on and level up. Our culture tends to point us in that direction. Our culture tends to tell us, grind it out, keep going, keep achieving. Toughness is great, and I'm not downplaying those things. I'm not. But I'm saying there's a great time to press pause and reflect and focus and look at the things that we've gone through and heal, discover greater healing. You know, there's some things that I intentionally moved past when I was sharing my story before. There were some things that I just tried to move on from. There were some things that I just tried to sweep under the rug. There were some things that I intentionally ignored in my life. And when I was sharing with you guys, here's kind of the real story. I grew up in Iowa. I was a student athlete, National Honor Society, Student Senate, all that stuff, whatever. And went to junior college baseball, played 2 years there, and chose a major, all that stuff. And in the middle of all that, just kind of like going around is like just regular old like family stuff, family drama, family troubles a little bit. And then after 2 years there, I transferred to Cleveland State. I moved 12 hours, played at Cleveland State. I played 1 year there. And then I remember about a month left in the season, my dad called me. And he said he found my mom laying on the dining room floor without a pulse. And called the paramedics, EMS. They came, and actually before they came, my mom was fine. She came back too. Her pulse came back. It was a blessing in that moment, but what we found out was she had a life-threatening heart condition. And she needed surgery for a defibrillator right away. They implanted that in her chest. Move past it. Get to the next thing. That happened. Cool. Get past it, Zach. On to the next mile marker. Actually, 2 weeks left in the season at Cleveland State, I find out that they're cutting the baseball program. I just uprooted, moved 12 hours. Now I'm transferring, looking for new schools. I'm also driving back and forth to Iowa to make sure my mom's okay and be with my family through that time. Move past it. Get past it. Move past it. Transfer schools. I transfer to Ashland University, play my senior year there. I feel like a freshman again, y'all. I'm telling you, like I walked onto campus. I had the campus map. I was trying to figure out where the heck all my classes were and stuff like that. I shouldn't feel like that. I don't know. Move past it. Get past it. Doesn't matter. Move past it. When I graduate Ashland University, play my senior year there, I found out that I actually had the same life-threatening heart condition that my mom did. I needed a defibrillator right away, needed surgery, and within the first 3 months, that defibrillator saved my life 3 times. Cool story, move past it. Get to the next one. Well, I graduate and I go to grad school. I go to grad school because I'm be flat out honest with you guys. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. Been there. I wanted to buy 2 more years of time, and so I went to grad school. Moved past it. Keep trying to figure it out. Moved to Columbus. Took a job. I loved the work that I got to do. But when I moved here, I didn't know anyone. And it was like really the first time in my life where I was like I had felt lonely before, but now I was like truly lonely. I didn't know anyone. Move past it. Get to the next thing. Well, I transition, become a life and leadership coach. I'm traveling, speaking at schools and events and different organizations and walking with people in their struggles a little bit too. But at the same time I'm doing that, there's a lot of doubt and fear that are cyclical that I deal with at that same time. I don't feel like I'm capable of doing the work that I'm doing. I don't feel like this is actually the right thing. I feel called to it, but then I'm struggling with that. Move past it. I'm supposed to be helping people with their struggles. I'm supposed to be helping people with their trauma and their drama and their issues. I don't have time to deal with my own. Get to the next thing. I accept the job at one church after that, and I'm here now. And laced within all of those stories, intermingling with all those stories, is a ongoing battle with depression and anxiety. But move past it. Culture says move past it. Like, get on with it. Get on with your life. Here's the thing, to truly discover what God has for us, we need to unpack what God had for us. We need to make an intentional decision to actually change the direction, to change our vantage point, to look backwards at the things that have happened in our lives. And for us to truly become more, for us to reach our full potential, for us to reach people and be the people that we were created to be, who God wants us to be, we can't ignore things that had happened. We need to look at them. We need to focus on them. We need to process them. We need to heal. And there's a lot of things, especially with the year we just walked through, that we need to heal in. Maybe some things that were bubbling up that you thought you moved past that are still there. And as a nation, there's some things that we need to look back at and learn from and process. You might be kind of confused right now. I don't know. Like, if I'm in your shoes, I'm like, what are you talking about, Zach? You just opened this whole thing up talking about Philippians. Paul says, forget the past, move on to the future. Run the race, keep going forward, do all those things. And I did say that. Philippians 3:13, I'll read it again. It says, no, dear brothers and sisters, I have not achieved it, but I focus on one thing, forgetting the past, looking forward to what lies ahead. There is a big difference between forgetting and ignoring. There is. Trust me, I Googled it. I got the definitions right here. Ignoring, refuse to take notice of or acknowledge, disregard intentionally. That's the definition of ignore. Here's Paul's definition of forget. Put out of one's mind, cease to think of or consider after you've learned. Know that you're not bound to your past. Know that you're not bound to your sin. Know that you're not bound to your mistakes. Know that you're not bound to the thing that person said to you that one time that stuck and you can't get rid of. Know that you're not bound to the adversity that's happened in your life. Know that you're not bound to it, that you can turn, face, process, learn from it, and then move forward. You can forget it after that. And let me show you why I know that's his definition. Later on in the book, Philippians, in the letter, Philippians 4:9, it says, keep putting into practice all you have learned and received from me. Learn from my past, learn from my mistakes, learn from the things that I've wrestled with, learn from what I've gone through, learn from what I've dealt with, learn from my demons. And here's the thing, if you know anything about Paul, you also know Paul was not always an entrepreneur of the gospel. He was not always traveling around planting churches. He was actually against Christ. He had to wrestle with some things. He had to go through some things. He wasn't a believer all the time. And so that wrestling, that learning, that turning, that processing, that healing from, actually that continual discovery of greater healing brought him to his full potential where he is today, writing this letter to Philippians. He learned from it. He turned. He made an intentional decision to question his direction on his path. Here's a quick illustration. He kind of talks about running a race, right? Talks about run the race. Honestly, I got like duped into running a half marathon one time, and right after that, I retired from running. I don't know why people run anymore. I'm not gonna lie. I retired from it. But you don't want to run injured. You don't want to run injured. You don't want to run a half marathon injured. It's brutal anyway. But say you're running, you're training, you're doing these things, and you tweak a hamstring. Well, if I don't stop and process, if I don't stop and give that injury attention, then it's going to turn into a bigger injury. It's going to turn into a torn hamstring. It's going to turn into something bigger that's going to cause a limp the rest of my life until I deal with it, until I get the proper people around me to help me. How about this? I'm an Enneagram 7. Enneagram is like this personality test and all these things. It's really popular right now. Enneagram 7 is like this enthusiast, adventurous. Like, that's me. That's me. I was in a meeting with Pastor Greg 2-3 weeks ago, and he was talking about like Colorado. Instantly, I like pictured the mountains, and like I started zoning out. I don't even remember what the meeting was about. I just heard Colorado, and I was like, woo. Sorry, Greg. But I was thinking about like hiking. I was thinking about climbing this mountain. You're on this path, you're on this trail, and you're seeing all these beautiful things, and the goal is to make it to the top of the mountain. And all of a sudden, I'm walking along, pop, roll my ankle on a rock or a stick or in a pothole or something. And the mistake is to keep trying to climb the mountain. At first, if I don't intentionally turn and question my direction and look at what injured me in the first place, I'm probably going to roll my ankle again. I'm probably not going to see the next pothole. I'm probably not going to see the next rock unless I learn from it, unless I deal with my injury, unless I heal from it. And here's the thing about injuries. Sometimes your injury, undealt with, can cause injury in other people's lives unless we heal from it. Your story, guaranteed, is not like mine. It's not the same. If you look around the room or you look in your community, wherever you're at, our stories are different. Every single person's story is different. We come from different backgrounds. We've gone through different things. We've had different conversations. We've had different moments in our lives. But I guarantee you that we've felt similar emotions. We've felt similar emotions. We've gotten to the end of a story. We've gotten to the end of a story and we turn to the last page or the last chapter, and maybe it was a really brutal story. Maybe it was a really tough time that you just went through. Get to the last chapter and you're like, oh, man, like why does it always feel this way? Why does the last page always feel this way? Why do I always feel how I feel? Why do I always have these emotions? Maybe it was a really good story. Maybe it was a really good story. You should be feeling great about yourself. You should be feeling proud. But you turn to the last page and you're like, why don't I feel healthy? Why don't I feel fulfilled? I should be proud. It was a great story that I just walked through. Why do I always feel this way? September 22nd was like a pivotal day, weekend in my life. That's when God like really inserted himself into, like it was inignorable. Is that a word? I don't know. He inserted himself into my life, and that's kind of when Greg started his Become series again. At the same time, his dad, Pastor Mark Ford, he's our care pastor here, he started a freedom group, and he wouldn't take no for an answer. He invited my wife and I to join it. We just had Cooper. We're going through this pandemic. We're like, we're kind of busy. Like, we're good. And he like wouldn't take no, so I'm glad we did it. I would highly suggest the freedom group. It's amazing. And then at the same time too, my buddy out in LA, his name's BC, he does these, he's like a life coach, leadership coach, and all that stuff too. That's how we met. And he does these global mentorship masterminds. And all three of those things had the same thing in common. They were looking at our life's story, in essence. They were looking at our past. They were looking at what makes us us, who we were created to be. And this kind of might sound cliche, but they were looking at how we can turn pain into purpose. How we can turn pain into purpose. And with the mentorship mastermind, I was introduced to really kind of like a framework, a pathway that we would say to discover how behaviors and mindsets are actually created. Here's the thing about behaviors and mindsets that we have. They don't just happen. You're not born with behaviors and mindsets. They are created. They're created. They start with a rolled ankle. They start with a tweaked hamstring. They start with something someone said to you. They start with a moment that happened in our country. They start with something. They start with a moment, memory, or trauma. And those moments, memories, or traumas create a belief about the world for you. The belief about the world creates an emotion. It inspires an emotion. And that emotion creates a narrative, a story that you tell about yourself. And if the emotion and belief and moment were negative ones, then the story that you tell about yourself is going to be a negative one. You guys probably know in your mind your negative stories that you tell about yourself. And then those negative stories, they create a behavior and a mindset. What I'm really learning right now in this season is that God's story, the way he writes stories, is it's usually always birth, death, and resurrection. Birth, death, pivot, deal with my stuff, and then he brings me to resurrection. There's some things in your life that you carried in here today, that you're holding on to you today, that need to die. There's some things that need to be laid to rest. There's some things that happened in your life that stuck and you didn't want them to stick, but you're still carrying them unintentionally. Maybe you don't know it, but you feel heavy. Maybe you don't know why you feel heavy. Maybe you don't know why you feel tired. Maybe you don't know why you don't feel healthy. There's some things in us that we need to lay to rest today. Actually, if you intentionally question and change the direction of your path today, then the pathway of creating behaviors and mindsets looks completely different. It's a pathway to a greater discovery to healing. You know, it starts with the behavior and mindset. What negative behaviors and mindsets are cyclical in my life? What keeps bubbling up? Well, what negative stories create those? What negative stories have I been telling about myself, to myself? What emotions do they come from? What beliefs about the world do I have? And then dig to the bottom, the why. What moments, memories, or traumas created that entire thing? They don't happen on a whim. They're created. You know, I mentioned that I played college baseball, and that didn't happen on a whim either. It was a path I felt like God had for me. I worked really hard for it. And I remember always playing catch with my dad in the backyard when I was growing up. I love my dad. I owe a lot to my dad for who I am today, for what he's helped me accomplish, for how I treat people. I love him. He loves me. That doesn't mean unintentional moments, memories, or traumas didn't happen. Just because we had a great relationship, moments still happen. I remember playing catch with him in the backyard. I'm like 4th, 5th grade, and I'm kind of getting sporadic. I'm not really accurate, and I'm throwing things left, right, over his head, pretty much everywhere but to him. And he's trying to help me instill this competitive nature and spirit. I'm already talking to him about how I want to go play college baseball. I'm a young kid, and he's trying to help me hone my skills. And he sticks out both of his arms, and he says, hey, if you don't throw it within my wingspan, I'm going to go inside. And so I'm like, oh, crap. I get really nervous. My next throw, I throw it over his head. And he does what he says he's going to do. He goes inside. That's a moment. That's a memory. That's a trauma. That's a moment that created a belief about the world that if I wanted to be loved or appreciated or have attention or achieve anything, I needed to be perfect. I needed to hit the wingspan. I needed to hit the chest. And that belief about the world created an emotion of shame and anger and all these things. And that emotion created a negative story. And that negative story created a behavior and a mindset that's a cyclical thing that bubbles up. That involves a lot of doubt and fear. Like, I'm not going to be good enough or things like that. And it's not just like that moment that created the whole thing. It's a lot of different moments. It's a lot of small moments added together in my life that created that narrative. I remember later that year, 4th, 5th grade, playing catch with my dad again in the backyard. And I'm kind of gassing it up on him. We're competitive with each other. And he's like, hey, I'm just going to match your velocity. Let's do it. And I'm like, fine, I can take it, whatever. I got it. And he throws it pretty hard back to me. I catch it. And I throw it as hard as I can back at him. He catches it, matches my velocity, and glances off my glove and hits me in the face. It's not on him. That's a moment. That's a memory. That's a trauma. That adds up. That adds up. And if we don't turn and deal with it, if we don't dig for it, that was a memory that I didn't even remember until I started digging. But all those things add up. We got to dig for it. I talk about my heart surgery, and it's funny, like that's a moment, that's a really hard moment that I don't know if I've ever paused and really processed every single aspect of it. I wake up and I brush my teeth in the morning, and I can see my scar on my chest in the mirror. And there's a funny thing, like physical healing, you get a cut, you get a wound, and your body does something, it reacts in a certain way. Here's the science behind how a scar is formed. Your body forms new collagen fibers to mend damage resulting in a scar. The new scar tissue will have a different texture and different quality than the surrounding tissue. It's a new texture, new quality. Here's the thing, we think that physical healing and emotional healing are different. They're the same. They're really the same. They're more similar than we think. We have a wound, we have a cut. And if we don't take time to process it, to heal, to learn from it, it can maybe turn into a little bit of an ugly scar. Won't heal as quick. And even if it does heal, it still leaves the scar. It still leaves the mark. The moment happened. You can't get rid of it. God can't get rid of that moment. It happened in your life. But what he can do is write a new story. The scar's not gone. The mark's not gone. And here's what I want to tell you guys today. The scar isn't a symbol of your shame. The scar isn't a symbol of your struggle. It's a symbol of your resilience. It's a symbol of how you bounce back. It's a symbol of your strength. Your scars give you strength. Your past stories give you strength for your future ones. God is rewriting. He's reshaping. He's transforming you. He's transforming you. If we participate in it the right way, if we invite him into it, if we dig for it, your scars give you strength. In a moment, we're going to process with a song, let God illuminate some things in our lives, and I want you guys to really ask these questions. What negative mindsets, behaviors are you holding on to? What negative stories are you telling about yourself? What emotions need to be dealt with and wrestled with? What beliefs about the world need to be reshaped with God's help? And then what moments need to be processed with God's love in the middle of them? Let's invite God into this moment. Let's process together.